life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
It's that time of the morning where we say good morning to you as Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa. I'm Asanda Beda.
I'm Peter Ndoro. The news is next. Here's Joalani Fulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Thousands of civilians are fleeing across the nearby border into Burundi. Soldiers and pro-government fighters are reported to join the fleeing civilians. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has given a 20-year prison sentence to Sudanese militia leader convicted in October of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman, also known as Ali Kashaib, was found guilty on 27 counts, including murder, torture and rape. The BBC's Richard Cargo has the story.
Dressed in a blue suit and tie, the 76-year-old stood quietly as presiding judge Joanna Kona delivered his sentence. She said Mr. Al-Rahman had personally carried out beatings and ordered executions during a brutal campaign marked by humiliation, killings and mass displacement. Prosecutors had pushed for a life sentence. He denied being a senior figure in the Janjaweed, the paramilitary force armed by Sudan's government to crush a rebellion in Darfur, where more than 300,000 people were killed and around 3 million fled their homes.
The Leronarevatu Memorial Trust has officially launched the Maseru Massacre art exhibition and musical tribute in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. The trust advocates for the socio-economic and educational support of the victims of the Maseru Massacre. The exhibition tribute coincides with the 43rd commemoration of the 1982 Maseru Massacre. This is where 30 African National Congress Party militants who were in exile in Lesotho were killed in an attack by the apartheid South African Defence Force alongside 12 Lesotho nationals. The organizer Nomzamo Nkachu says they are calling on government to accelerate the provision of support to the families of those who lost their lives and survivors of the massacre.
Faced with challenges today. We've got families that are still crying. I'll give you an example of widows who are still grappling or not knowing how they will be able to get their husbands' force numbers. Their husbands were part of the victims of the 1982 Maseru massacres. Now, having a force number unlocks the family to getting an education assist for their children, for them to get a military veterans pension. Those are widows who they've been knocking at different doors and no one is assisting.
The Human Rights Commission, together with the Department of Justice and other stakeholders in South Africa, will commemorate the signing into law of the country's constitution at Constitution Hill in Bloemfontein in Johannesburg today. This as the world commemorates International Human Rights Day. The Commission spokesperson, Wisani Baloyi, says the commemoration seeks to underscore the principle of rule of law, which provides essential framework for human rights accountability.
The 10th of December is a sacrosanct day on the calendar of South Africa in that it is the day on which the Constitution of South Africa was signed into law and also the day on which International Human Rights Day is observed. Organized under the theme Human Rights, Our Everyday Essential, the commemoration seeks to underscore the principle of the rule of law, which provide essential framework for human rights, accountability through just law, transparent governance, and impartial judicial to justice.
And finally, civil society researchers, advocacy groups and governments are calling for collaborative efforts to end stigma and discrimination against people living with HIV and AIDS. This emerged at the launch of the HIV Stigma Index 2.0 report in South Africa, Pretoria, yesterday. The study, compiled by the National Association of People Living with HIV and AIDS, the HSRC and the National AIDS Council, captures the experiences of more than 5,000 participants across the country country. Researchers say the findings mark a major step toward ending HIV as a public health threat. The report found persistent stigma to be a barrier to treatment and prevention, despite progress in reducing new infections. HSRC senior researcher Dr. Mpumi Zungu.
Our research has highlighted how stigma undermines access to HIV testing, treatment, psychological support, and ultimately how it affects the health, outcomes, and also well-being of the people living with HIV. So the index is a legacy, but it also incorporates the work that we have done over the years, using updated tools and methodologies, and reflects the current context while addressing the emerging challenges that we face.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, a big result for Arne Slot without Mo Salah in the UEFA Champions League, while the Proteas are beaten by 101 runs by India in the first T20 match on Tuesday. Details of these and other stories coming up at 6:30.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Yes, indeed. Every weekday morning between 6 and 9, this is where you get the best in current affairs and news from across the continent. I'm Peter Ndoro, and coming up in this next half an hour in particular, I'm going to be looking in focus on what's happening in West Africa with our regular commentator, Dr. Matsanga.
Always great looking forward to those chats. Also, it's International Human Rights Day today, and this is celebrated every year on December the 10th to commemorate the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN General Assembly. It was back in 1948 that happened, and we'll be delving deeper into how far we've come then, especially as a continent, on human rights issues. Of course, that and more will be coming up. My name is Asanda, Beda. Connect with us on www.channelafrica.co.za. Also on YouTube, we're live streaming at Channel Africa 1.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
So every day after the 6 o'clock news, we try and catch you up with the top news stories and events of the past 24 hours to make sure that you stay updated. And we do this with our team of reporters and correspondents from across the continent, making sense of all of those stories for us. And we begin our Africa Roundup with this. The International Criminal Court has sentenced a Janjaweed militia leader to 20 years in prison for crimes committed in Sudan's Darfur region, including the killing of detainees with an axe.
Ali Mohammed Ali Abdul Rahman was found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, including murder, torture and orchestrating rape. The presiding judge, Joanna Corner, said he not only gave orders that led to the crimes, but also personally perpetrated them.
Abd al-Rahman's conviction is the first acknowledgement that the people of Darfur were not victims of mere intertribal conflict or something akin to that. They were victims of a deliberate campaign.
Abd al-Rahman's defence argued he was the victim of mistaken identity and claimed that any sentence beyond 7 years would amount to a de facto life term given his age. Mobilized Arab militias known as the Janjaweed to crush a revolt by non-Arab rebels, with the resulting violence amounting to genocide according to the US and human rights groups.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has accused Rwanda of breaking its commitments under a US-brokered peace deal aimed at ending years of conflict in eastern DRC. The allegations come just days after signing a signing ceremony in Washington. Speaking to lawmakers in Kinshasa, Tshisekedi criticized Rwanda's actions, whilst the US State Department called on Kigali to prevent any escalation.
Despite our good faith in the recently ratified agreement, it is clear that Rwanda is already violating its commitments. The day after the signing, units of the Rwandan Defense Forces conducted and supported heavy weapons attacks. Moreover, these facts are part of a reality established long ago by the United Nations. Indeed, the group of experts on the Democratic Republic of Congo, in its final report of June 3, 2025, then reiterated on September 19, 2025, concludes that the RDF exercises effective direction and control of the operations of the M23, thus engaging the responsibility of the Rwandan state.
A group of 100 Nigerian school children rescued from kidnappers are set to be reunited with their families after undergoing medical checks in central Niger State. The students are among more than 300 pupils and 12 staff that were abducted from St. Mary's boarding school on November the 21st, in one of Nigeria's worst mass kidnappings in over a decade. Vanessa Chan has more.
The released children arrived at the government house in Niger's capital, Minna, and were handed over to the state governor. One of the children, Florence Michael, said they slept in the forest.
They give us tampon that we should put it down, we should lie down and sleep, that we should not make noise for them.
Here's Niger State Governor Muhammad Umar Baku.
I want to reassure parents and guardians of these children that they will be safely delivered to them very, very soon. We have called on medical health workers to come and look at them. They will be checked properly and before taking them back to the parents.
He added that authorities were working to secure the remaining hostages.
And finally, on the outskirts of Mogadishu in Somalia, families driven from their homes by failed rains and drying riverbeds in southern Somalia are building makeshift shelters from the tarpaulins and sticks. Now, the scenes reflect a growing wave of displacements caused by the country's worsening drought. Sean Hogan has more.
Across Somalia, the failure of October to December rains has deepened drought conditions. Camp leader Hawa Ali Falkad said more than 400 newly displaced families have recently arrived. They've been driven from their homes, she said, by severe drought and ongoing conflict. Amnesty International researcher David Ngera authored a report on how countries like Somalia bear the brunt of climate change.
And as Africa, we believe we are not interested in global politics because our people are dying. So we want resources because we didn't cause this problem. We account for less than 4% of the pollution. And we believe those who cause the problem and those who continue to cause climate change now need to send resources as obligated. It is not a favor and it is not out of philanthropy. It is out of international law, out of international commitment under the Paris Agreement and under the international commitment under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change.
So that's how we come to this Wednesday's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow here on Rise and Shine. Of course, this feature comes after the 6 a.m. news. And coming up, we zoom into what's happening in the West African region of our continent. We have our resident analyst joining us on that, and he'll be in conversation with our colleague Peter. And that geopolitical analyst and is Dr. David Matsanga. Stay tuned for that one.
Madapiri pazoshitika. Madapiri pazoshitika.
Inogeka zingeni chihana lumbiritsidwa kukhala wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dziko la Malawi pa mwambo omwe unachitika ku nyumba ya chifumu ya Sanjika mu mzinda wa Blantyre. Ndiye pano tili ndi olemekezeka achihana takulandirani olemekezeka pano pa wireless ya Channel Africa pa Chinyanja Service. Amalawi ayembekezere zotani kuchokera kwa inu ngati wachiwiri winanso kwa president wa dzikolo?
Choyamba ngati vice president umagwira ntchito yopatsidwa ndi president imene yakuganizira. Ndiye malowozi athu atipatsa bwinobwino, koma ntchito yathu yayikulu ndi kuwathandiza president kuti masomphenya awo akwaniritsidwe. Pali zambiri zoti zichitike, nkhani ya njala mdziko muno, boma la udakali chimanga ndi china chomwe chili mdziko muno kuti tithandize ana families are affected. Chachiwiri kunali ma fuel shortages amene akanaliponso apo ndi apo, tionetsetse kuti pumps athu asakhale dry.
Zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madapiri.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
15 minutes past 6 Central African time it is. Let's take a look at the World Health Organization now, saying traditional medicine continues to play a major role in global healthcare systems and demand is rising. This comes as the agency prepares for the second WHO Global Summit on Traditional Medicine, taking place from the 17th to the 19th of December, this in New Delhi, India. At a media briefing on Tuesday, WHO experts outlined the organization's work to strengthen evidence, regulation, and integration of traditional medicine into national health systems. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more.
For billions of people across the world, traditional medicine is not an alternative, it is their first point of care. Dr. Shyama Kuruvila, acting director of the World Health Organization Global Traditional Medicine Center, says its use is widespread and deeply rooted.
About 90% of WHO member states report its use amongst 40 to 90% of their populations. Traditional medicine is often the closest or only care available for many people. And for many others, it's a preferred choice because it is personalized and holistic. It's bioculturally aligned, and it supports overall well-being rather than only treating specific disease symptoms.
Dr. Kuruvila says countries have now committed to a long-term plan to advance traditional medicine through science, regulation, and collaboration.
Earlier this year, all WHO member states adopted the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Strategy 2025 to 2034 that guides work on evidence, regulation, systems integration, and multi-stakeholder collaboration rooted in community engagement. Global demand is rising due to chronic diseases, mental health needs, stress management, and the search for holistic, personalized, meaningful care.
WHO's chief scientist, Dr. Sylvie Briand, says traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine offers many solutions, but also raises scientific challenges.
Millions of people around the world use some form of traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine, TCIM. Why? Because when it comes to health, we all seek the best possible solution. TCIM offers a wide range of treatment and approaches applied in different circumstances. And this diversity is an asset. It represents countless potential solutions to health problems. Yet, it also poses a challenge for science.
As traditional medicine grows globally, WHO says strong regulation is essential to protect patients and ensure quality. Dr. Sangchol Kim, WHO Unit Head for Standards, Regulation and Integration, explains the approach.
Talking about the traditional medicine that related with the regulation,
It's three pillars: traditional medicine product, and traditional medicine practice, and traditional medicine practitioner. So traditional medicine is so diverse in different countries, and different traditional systems of medicines are being recognized and practiced. So in order to harmonize and composing those different types of the regulation, particularly for traditional medicine products, we try to build that international standard, quality, and safety of the herbal medicine.
He says WHO is also developing tools to help countries strengthen oversight of herbal medicines.
We have WHO initiate developing international herbal pharmacopoeia. So I think this is one of the key initiatives. At the same time, in order to help member countries strengthen the regulatory mechanism for herbal medicine, we try to build international global benchmarking tool for assessing and helping member countries to improve regulatory mechanism of the herbal medicine.
The WHO Global Summit is expected to bring governments, researchers and traditional medicine practitioners together to discuss how to integrate centuries-old knowledge with modern science while ensuring safe, effective care for patients worldwide. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country was not willing to cede territory to Russia as part of a U.S. proposal to end the conflict with Russia. The Ukrainian leader has been crisscrossing European capitals to shore up long-term support and coordinate a strategy ahead in an effort to blunt the U.S. plan that could include major territorial concessions to Russia by Kiev, Ukraine foregoing any future membership of NATO and reducing the size of its military, while some frozen Russian assets could go towards rebuilding Ukraine, among other measures. Reports suggest Ukraine is preparing to present a revised plan to the White House. Showen Bryce Peace reports from New York.
Zelensky in London Monday for meetings with the leaders of the UK, France and Germany, followed by a stop in Brussels for engagements with the European Union and NATO. Tuesday at the Vatican for an audience with the Pope, then on to Rome to meet Italy's Prime Minister, while insisting that under Ukrainian law and morally, they cannot cede any territory to Russia.
Things which are very important for today, I think unity between Europe and Ukraine, and also unity between Europe, Ukraine and the United States. There are some things which we can't manage without Americans, things which we can't manage without Europe. And that's why we need to make some important decisions.
As some European leaders view elements of the US proposal with some skepticism, while calling it a decisive moment for the region. Listen to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
We are still and remain strongly behind Ukraine and giving support to your country, because we all know that this the destiny of this country is the destiny of Europe. So that's the reason why we are here, trying to figure out what we can do. And nobody should doubt on our support for Ukraine. And that's what we are firmly standing behind. And the outcome is open. I'm skeptical about some of the details which we are seeing in the documents coming from U.S. side. But we have to talk about that.
And as Europe punts the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine that includes robust security guarantees, an optimistic view from the United States, at least according to Keith Kellogg, the outgoing U.S. envoy on Ukraine.
I think we're at the last 10 meters of trying to end this conflict where it's at. I think we're really down to a couple of issues, and the issues that are one are on terrain, which is primarily Donetsk, which is the second oblast. You have Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson, and the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is currently in cold storage right now. But that is a huge nuclear power plant. If we get those two issues settled, I think the rest of the things will work out fairly well.
The Kremlin welcomed the new U.S. national security strategy unveiled this week of flexible realism that warned that Europe faced civilizational erasure while seeking to establish strategic stability with Russia. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov.
The current administration is fundamentally different from previous ones, and of course, President Trump is strong now. strong in terms of his domestic political position. This gives him the ability to adjust the concept in line with his vision. The adjustments that we see correspond in many ways to our vision. So, there is reason to hope this could be a modest guarantee that constructive joint work on finding a peaceful settlement for Ukraine, at minimum, can continue.
At the United Nations Security Council, this from the UN's Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Officer in Charge, Kayoko Goto.
Since the beginning of the full-scale war nearly 4 years ago, the people of Ukraine have not only shown remarkable resilience to endure the horrible consequences of the war, but also determination to build a peaceful, democratic, and prosperous future for their country. We have seen this consistently in the action of Ukrainian civil society, in particular organizations led by women and young people. People of Ukraine want peace that is just and lasting. Meeting their aspirations and enduring the long-term stability of the region must remain our collective focus and priority.
As the world now awaits the revised peace proposal from Ukraine, that plan expected later Tuesday amid pressure from Washington on Kyiv to quickly agree to a peace settlement. President Zelensky indicated Monday that the revised plan he would present to the United States comprised 20 points, but that there was still no agreement on the issue of ceding territory, which Moscow has pushed for. And while the US side suggests an agreement was close, there's been very little pointing in that direction, particularly on the sticky questions of territory and security guarantees for Ukraine. I'm Sherman Bryce-Pease in New York.
Right, let's take a look at what's been happening in West Africa, and it's a country that's experienced another tense week of eventful events, political uncertainty, security pressures and shifting regional dynamics dominating the headlines. Benin is grappling with the fallout of a failed coup attempt. Well, to make sense of this story is Dr. Matsanga, who's our regular commentator, a specialist in international relations and conflict resolution. Dr. Matsanga, always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good morning. And our prediction, as I said before we left with you, I said another coup is looming.
So this one seems to have been put down, but they're not saying too much. But the word is that Nigeria pretty much had a hand in this.
Yes. Nigeria, France, they did operate covertly and even over the territories of ASS of the Sahara republics, of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Yes, they were involved in putting this one down, but they have not put the rebels down. It looks like the head of the coup himself is missing and in safe location somewhere from the intelligence sources that I've got.
Does that mean that there's potential for more problems, or has this been quelled finally?
No, it hasn't been closed. According to the sources, that intelligence sources from West African states around there, it is not yet over until it is over.
Okay, what about Guinea-Bissau? The military announced a National Transition Council. What triggered this latest confrontation?
This confrontation is still elections, and I've written a book on that one, and you can get it on my Twitter handle. I've tagged you, Ndoro. Read my points about elections. People announcing elections early, even claiming victory before the vote is counted. That is one of the problems. And I told you the other time, one man, one vote is dead in Africa.
What's the alternative?
Yes, let's go back to a drawing table. China went back 40 years ago. It removed what was the obstacle. Africa needs to go back and remove what is the obstacle. What is making Africa have more coups, more violence than any other continent on the universe.
All right. The Nigeria story, was that at the behest of ECOWAS, or are they acting alone?
Nigeria seemed to be acting alone with France. You remember France? Dismembered Libya, and France is working so hard to regain the territory it lost in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So the leaders of the three countries plus other countries that have been waiting to fight France are ready and preparing to fight France. You remember France is blockading oil fuel from coming from Mali, the conflict that we discussed with Asanda here of Mali and Algeria and Mali. So that is exactly, it is a French war that is, France is using Nigeria as a base to fight the Sahel region. It is not very good. It's not ECOWAS. Yeah, what is ECOWAS? ECOWAS is France. It has no authority. The money that runs ECOWAS comes from Paris. So what is ECOWAS when you tell me ECOWAS? When you tell me SADC? When you tell me East African Community? It's already, when you tell me African Union, it is begging. It's a beggar begging for money from this European Union. So there are no institutions here, Peter Ndoro.
Dr. Matsanga, always good talking to you. Let's do it again next week. Take care.
Thank you very much for this short time, but next week we shall be in time to be able to discuss. Good morning, but I am telling you, leaving you with another word, there is a bigger one looming around there.
We'll be watching that story for sure. But first, let's catch you up with the headlines. 6:30, Chwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Political analyst Sandy Leswana has criticized the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress Party in South Africa, saying it's made up of people who have no integrity. And finally, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to get his country's law changed so that a presidential election could take place within 3 months. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now get our first full bulletin for this morning in terms of the world of sports. And Musubudi Makura is going to give us those updates.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. Orlando Pirates defender Asanda has paid tribute to Super Eagles captain as well as a national teammate William Tross-Ekong following his retirement from international football just last week. Now, Tross-Ekong stepped away from Nigerian duty after 83 caps, and despite being named in the preliminary AFCON squad, he chose to call time on his international career just days before this month's tournament. And I lamented that he sees as a lack of appreciation for a long-serving skipper.
He's a great person, to be honest. I can tell you from the first day, I think the first time I got the call up when I met him. Now, he's a fantastic person. Apart from being a captain, he's a leader. And he does so much for us. But obviously how football works. Everyone is not going to like you. But you can see from what he did for us, in the last AFCON, player of the tournament. It says a lot, but I think as human beings, we're quick to forget.
On to this now. Liverpool bounced back from a damaging row of Mohamed Salah by beating Inter Milan 1-0 on Tuesday and kicking their Champions League campaign back into life. Now, Dominic Soboslai's late penalty gave the Reds a huge win at the San Siro in the absence of the Egyptian star Salah, who was left in England after publicly criticising manager Arne Slot at the weekend. So Liverpool fans loudly chanted Slot's name at the end of a largely drab match, which was decided by Felix Zweyer's decision to give the English champions a perfect chance to snatch the points. Inter players were enraged at the awarding of the sport kick for the light shirt tag by Alessandro Bostona on Florin Ritz, but it gave Slot a happy ending to a troubled few days, where the days have been dominated by the draw with Mohamed Salah. This is what Slot had to say following that win.
Our midfield, and I would like to highlight one player because he's been highlighted a few times also in a negative way, and this time I would like to highlight Konate, who played a very good game. against two very good strikers together with Virgil. They were, I don't think they made a mistake at all, or like I said, we only conceded one chance. And it's a big compliment if you play against such a good team. And what it means to me, that the fencing, for me, that means a lot for me. But I said yesterday, it's not about me, it's about the team. And they were also there for the team.
Onto this now, FIFA's Ethics Committee has been asked to investigate President Gianni Infantino, claiming he broke the governing body's rules on political neutrality in relation to United States President Donald Trump. Infantino awarded Trump with the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize at the 2026 World Cup draw in Washington, D.C. just last week, and has also done social media posts and interviews in support of the 79-year-old president. Now, human rights campaign group Fair Square has written a letter of complaint to FIFA. According to the letter, Infantino does not have the authority to unilaterally dictate the organization's mission, strategic direction, policies, as well as values. As well as a large golden trophy, Trump received a medal and a certificate from Infantino on the night. On to some cricket news now. Hardik Pandya's brilliant half-century rescued India from the top-order slump to post a total of 175 for 6 before the bowlers tore through the run chase to dismiss South Africa for just 74 runs in 12.3 overs. This to win by an eye-watering margin of 101 runs in the first of 5 T20 internationals at the Barbati Stadium in the city of Cuttack on Tuesday. It was South Africa's lowest ever total in a T20 international, with the highest score of just 22 from Devon Berries, while all 6 bowlers used by India claimed at least 1 wicket. The home side started the series as strong favourites with a settled and informed team which had won 26 and lost just 4 matches since the these two countries had met in the last T20 World Cup final in Barbados 17 months ago. So South Africa have used over 30 players in the format during that time and have also won 9 matches and lost 16, including a once-off fixture against Namibia. Now, the second match of the 5-match T20 series will take place on Thursday. And finally, Helmut Marko, the mentor as well as a major ally of 4 times Formula One world champion Max Verstappen, is leaving the Red Bull team after 20 years as motorsport consultant to the energy drink brand. The 82-year-old Austrian, a Grand Prix racer back in the 1970s, as well as a close confidant of the team's founder Dietrich Mateschitz, who died back in 2022, also headed the Red Bull's junior program. In that role, he helped bring 20 drivers into Formula One, where Red Bull also have 2 teams, including champions Sebastian Vettel as well as Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, Verstappen thanked Marko in a social media post for his contributions he made to his career. And with that concludes your first sporting update this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us as well on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
International Human Rights Day today. I don't know what that reflects for us as Africans. We were talking just yesterday, Tanzania's Independence Day celebrations cancelled. Human rights abuse is obviously happening there. We heard also from the Human Rights Watch in terms of their assessment of issues there. Why do you think SADC hasn't said anything about their observer mission yet?
Well, SADC spoke last after the election, and that was the last time we heard about them. And they basically said this was a no-go, this election. They gave it a thumbs down, and very few people, you can imagine the ones that did, President Mnangagwa, President Museveni, you can sort of see a pattern of who is endorsing Tanzania's election and those that haven't. So it's not a surprise, to be honest. Well, but on International Human Rights Day, we've gotten to a point where people don't even realize sometimes that their rights are being abused because they've been abused for so long.
Yeah.
And you're born into a system of abuse, you think it's normal.
Yeah. So around 7:20 in the next hour, we'll be having that chat. Stay tuned for that on International Human Rights Day.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sports is a business, and for that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people.
Francis F.M. Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It's time to take a look at your business news. Here's Matapelo Mahapi.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. The Tunisian embassy in Pretoria says economic diplomacy is driving stronger ties between Tunisia and South Africa. Speaking at a year-end business networking event in Pretoria on Thursday, Ambassador Karima Badoui hailed a year of growing trade links and bold efforts to showcase Tunisian products across South Africa. She reaffirmed Tunisia's readiness for fostering a partnership with South Africa.
This year, our economic diplomacy took center stage. We worked hand in hand with South African partners to showcase Tunisian products, to connect our companies and explore opportunities from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth, whether it was supporting exporters, facilitating B2B meetings, or spotlighting Tunisia at business fairs. Our message remained simple: Tunisia is open, Tunisia is dynamic and ready for business with South Africa.
Prices of cobalt hydroxide used to make chemicals for electric vehicle batteries have risen sharply this year due to cobalt export restrictions from top producer Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo suspended all cobalt exports in February, but then introduced a quota system in October, aiming to boost state revenues and tighten oversight in a country that produces more than 70% of the metal globally, estimated at more than 280,000 metric tons this year. It has set new conditions for exporters, potentially complicating the recently introduced quota system, which analysts say is likely to exacerbate shortages and support cobalt hydroxide prices. And South African consumers are showing improved willingness to spend, with a rise in consumer confidence being noted in the fourth quarter of the year. The FNB BER Consumer Confidence Index improved by -9 points in the fourth quarter, after falling from a -10 to -13 in the third quarter of 2025. The uptick in the consumer confidence index, coupled with employment gains and a further interest rate cut, suggested that retail growth moderation could be less than expected compared to the same time last year. FNB Chief Economist Mamello Matekanga Ngwenya explains.
It is the highest consumer confidence reading for 2025. The improvement in consumer sentiment suggests that consumers' appetite to spend extended into the holiday season. All three of the sub-indices of the Consumer Confidence Index improved during the fourth quarter of 2025. The sub-index, measuring the appropriateness of the present time to buy durable goods, saw the largest jump from -20 to -14 index points, reaching the highest level since the second quarter of 2019. Lower interest rates and a stronger rand exchange rate are supporting the affordability of durable goods in particular.
And South Africa's Itala bank depositors have begun flocking to branches designated to pay out their funds in KwaZulu-Natal as government begins the process of releasing funds. The National Treasury has made up to $129.64 million available to start payments this week through FNB. Zanele Buthelezi reports.
Depositors are being sent SMSs directing them to the branches to submit their information before receiving funds. The funds will be available to depositors at the new banking institution for withdrawal or transfer until 2028. More than 250,000 depositors with Itala had their funds frozen at the beginning of the year. Itala, with the support of the provincial government, is fighting a liquidation application filed by the South African Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority.
And the British government says the fraudulent claims of taxpayer funds during the COVID-19 pandemic cost Britain's public finance $14.5 billion. This is according to a report from the COVID-19 Counter-Fraud Commissioner, which showed that many schemes like bounce-back loans and Eat Out to Help Out, rolled out by the former Conservative government, lacked safeguards against fraud. Finance Minister Rachel Reeves says leaving the front door open to fraud has cost the British taxpayer money that could have been funding the country's public services, supporting families and strengthening the economy. The government says it has recouped $540.5 million of this so far, rather. And look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 451. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 18. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 33. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 10. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 43. Russia, it's 76 rubles 82. India, it's 89 rupees 92. While in China, it's 71.6. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rands 4 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,214 and platinum at $1,665 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.03 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app.
Well, it is December with all that's happening. It's the festive season, and we take a look at this story now. Financial experts saying the joy of festive spending often leads to January's financial woes. They say the festive season can be testing for even the most financially disciplined consumers, and by the time people return to work, many will have spent more than they can afford. Experts say during this kind of emotionally charged spending period, financial discipline is crucial. Here's Nhlanhla Mahlangu with more.
With the festive season in high gear and many companies paying out a 13th check or bonus at this time of the year, financial experts say it's important to manage your budget well and even have money left over to help you navigate the long way to January payday. Between year-end functions, Christmas parties, family visits, travels and holidays, expenses can add up quickly. When the reality settles back in after New Year, many families suddenly realize it's only a start of a new school year and the post-holiday blues come with a few new bills. Deshni Naidu, Program Manager for Consumer Education at FNB, says there's no perfect formula for festive spending, but one can set realistic expectations.
I think it's tempting when we get that bonus or that 13th check is to spend it on luxury items or to treat ourselves to something nice for the hard work we've put in all year. And I still think it's important to reward ourselves, but equally important is to ensure that we can try and use it in a bit more of a responsible way. And what I mean by this is that if we have outstanding debt, maybe consider putting away a little bit to paying off that debt, and then putting maybe some aside for savings, and then finally something to reward yourself. I have a colleague who talks about, the 70-20-10 principle, 70% towards paying off expenses and debt, 20% savings if you are over indebted, and then 10% to reward yourself. Alternatively, if you don't have debt, think about putting away for emergency savings and then to cover some of the additional costs you will incur during the festive season.
She says financial literacy must be seen as a life skill.
Money makes the world go round, right? Some people say. But money also can make or break us as individuals, as families. It can give us a future or not. And that's why I think it's a critical life skill. It's a life skill because we need to know how to make good decisions for financial resilience and financial well-being. And so it starts with understanding how money works. It starts with understanding how to spend less than we earn, how to use credit for the right reasons, and how to use it, for developmental reasons, also like for education, and also how to avoid getting into trouble with overspending. And that's why I say financial literacy is a life skill, because it impacts on our livelihood, it impacts on our lives, it impacts on our well-being, and it even impacts on our psychological state.
With some workers receiving a year-end bonus, we took to the streets of Johannesburg to find out how they plan to use it.
Yes, I'm so excited, and the beautiful thing about it is that it came with a letter as a confirmation. When they said on the 20th of this month, your salary will be doubled, I was like, wow. They said it's a 13th check in which the company that I've just joined in 1 year, 2 months, it's able to give you twice your salary, as they call it, performance-based. So when everyone in the company has performed very well, they normally will do that. So I even signed for it to say, hey, I'm appreciating this. And when people are going to be playing around with their money, some of us will be saving it for January, because January sometimes it causes crunch times. Kids coming back from home in the rural areas, they would be saying, we want this and this. They do this time around, will be like, wow, the beauty of bonuses. I wish other companies can follow suit, to motivate their workers. Things like this, they really motivate us, some of us as workers, knowing very well that the company appreciates whatever that we are doing for them.
No, we don't. The reason that we've been told in the past has always been that the company never has enough money. And KPIs are not properly structured, so you don't actually know whether you have met your quota or not.
Experts say financial stress is one of the biggest contributors to holiday anxiety, but with a clear picture of one's credit standing, it's easier to make smarter decisions and avoid unnecessary debt and set yourself up for a healthier 2026. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Right, it's a little bit before the top of the hour, 9 minutes to go actually, and I'm wondering what happened in Tanzania yesterday. I'm just not able to find anything. It's just complete blackout of internet, and so things must have happened, but we'll try and dig up as much as we can under very difficult circumstances.
They're bound to let us in at some point in terms of information. We will find something.
Okay, quite a bit still to come, but more details a little later.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix. Leo tujadili kuhusu chipukizi wanaoimba nyimbo za wasanii wengine. Unadhani hili linatokana na nini, Omari?
Nadhani kweli kwamba tukizama muziki ya sasa, hasa wasanii ambao ni chipukizi, kwa kweli kwamba yani karibu kutoka muziki wao wenyewe, lakini wanakuwa wanataka kuhubiria muziki ya zamani, hizo muziki ya wengine ambao ni taimbo. Wengine wanadai kufanya hivyo ni kupromote vipaji vyao haraka ili waweze kujulikana. Je, yawezekana kukawa na ukweli wowote au ndio kukosa kabisa kipaji cha kuandika mistari? Ndio, unaona kwamba msanii anapoazimia kwamba kuchukua wimbo mwingine wa msanii mwingine na kurudia yani mara mbili sivyo, haionyeshi kwamba yani ndio wanaanza kazi ya muziki aizani, lakini ukiangalia kabisa asilimia kubwa utakuja kuona kwamba wanakosa ile mawazo ya kutunga muziki.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa. On Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Tunisia's ambassador to South Africa, Karima Bardoui, says that Tunisia is open for business and eager to strengthen economic ties with South Africa. Speaking at a business networking event hosted by the Tunisian embassy in Pretoria on Tuesday, Ambassador Bardoui urged South Africa to view Tunisia as their second home, highlighting the importance of the African Continental Free Trade Area and deeper bilateral cooperation, a drive for more connected, resilient and sustainable African economy. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe was there.
South Africa and Tunisia enjoy a steadily expanding relationship built on shared continental goals, diplomatic cooperation and growing economic links. Despite the distance between them, both countries are united in their commitment to African integration and inclusive development. Their partnership has broadened over time to include trade, culture, investment, and stronger people-to-people ties. On Tuesday, the Tunisian embassy in Pretoria held its final networking event of the year, where Ambassador Karima Bardoui highlighted the purpose of the event.
It's just, to tell them Tunisia is your second home, so please feel free to get in touch with us, with our embassy, to have all the informations needed and to promote more the business between Tunisia and South Africa. We spoke about how important is the AFCFTA, the free trade zone within the African continent, how it's important for us to promote bilateral cooperation between African countries, to promote our economy, to have more links, more business between us and us. And I think this is also what was the main and key message during the G20 of this year of South African chairmanship and presidency. Let's work together to build a sustainable economy, African economy, how to promote more solidarity between us.
Bardoui also announced that Tunisian olive oil has arrived in South Africa for local distribution, marking a new step in expanding trade between the two countries. She added that more products may follow next year as Tunisia deepens cooperation with South Africa's Department of Science, Technology and Innovation.
I'm happy to announce that we have the Tunisian olive oil, which came from Tunisia to Port Elizabeth. It was in the beginning of, I think it's in November. So proud of a Tunisian, South African who was keen to bring Tunisian olive oil. So we're starting with the Tunisian olive oil. Next year, maybe why not with dates? So you are true. We are working a lot with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, all about science diplomacy.
Bardoui also revealed plans for 2026 events, including a Tunisia-South Africa Forum on Women in Agribusiness and major science diplomacy program on artificial intelligence in partnership with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation.
We are always on board to organize events, but just to let you know and then give you a primeur about what we will do. For example, next year we will talk about women in agribusiness in Tunisia and South Africa, and I'm also in touch with some other ambassadors from other embassies to talk about the women in agribusiness, because how to empower women are very important for my embassy, for Tunisia, for my country especially. So we will talk about women in agribusiness here in some rural and remote areas, and then try to share best practices. We will talk also about artificial intelligence. We will have a big event with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. This is always under the chapeau of science diplomacy.
MSME Chambers South Africa President Noah Dibela weighed in on the trade relationship between South Africa and Tunisia.
The relationship is at the infancy stage. I think it's just at the start of what we can be able to do and achieve between South Africa and Tunisia. The focus this year has been about really promoting the green liquid gold of Tunisia, which is the olive oil. So we are working with a Tunisian, lady to be able to, who has been in South Africa for 3 generations now. she's preserving actually Tunisian olive oil because of the climate change that's happening. A lot of the olive farms in Tunisia are becoming difficult to grow. So now, the same way where, a couple of hundred years ago, the wine started growing, grapes to create wine started growing so well in the Western Cape, brought by the French, we can actually foresee that with Tunisian olives, we can literally create a similar story in terms of a strong olive oil industry in South Africa, and that really being a good anchor of a future relationship. So that has been the work that we've been doing this year.
The Bela also shared what 2026 will look like.
Secondly, for 2026, the focus is going to be now on really enhancing international trade. So as MSME Chamber South Africa, we work closely with the International Trade Council, and then they've got an interesting platform called RMFTD, which contains 80% of global trade data. The unfortunate part is that the 20% which is missing is primarily from African countries. So we did an introduction with the Tunisian embassy. They were able to be quite quick and swift in meeting with ITC and ensuring that a lot more data coming out of in Tunisia is also part of that particular platform. This way it will democratize trade data whereby South African companies can be able to access information about how to enter and do business with Tunisia much easier, unlike now having to pay an expensive consultation fee to understand, hey, how do we enter the Tunisian market.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
I'm Peter Ndoro, and you are listening to Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective every single day.
And it is 7 o'clock Central African time. I'm Asanda Beda. Thank you for staying with us as we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa, and it's time for news. Here's Dwelani Tulo Nwebe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Thousands of civilians are fleeing across the nearby border into Burundi. The BBC's David Bamford has the story.
Eyewitnesses say the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have reached the northern gates of Uvira, the last government-held city in South Kivu province. Soldiers and pro-government Wazalendo fighters are reported to have joined the flow of civilians fleeing into Burundi. The M23's new offensive undermines the ceasefire agreements brokered by US President Donald Trump that were signed just a week ago in Washington by the leaders of Congo and Rwanda.
The International Criminal Court in The Hague has given a 20-year prison sentence to a Sudanese militia leader convicted in October of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman, known as Ali Kashaib, was found guilty on 27 counts, including murder, torture and rape. The BBC's Richard Cargo has the story.
Dressed in a blue suit and tie, the 76-year-old stood quietly as presiding Judge John Akona delivered his sentence. She said Mr. Al-Rahman had personally carried out beatings and ordered executions during a brutal campaign marked by humiliation, killings and mass displacement. Prosecutors had pushed for a life sentence. He denied being a senior figure in the Janjaweed, the paramilitary force armed by Sudan's government to crush a rebellion in Darfur, where more than 300,000 people were killed and around 3 million fled their homes.
Political analyst Sandile Swana has criticized the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress Party in South Africa, saying it's made up of people who have no integrity. Swana argues that the commission is populated by NEC members who have been mentioned in corruption cases, including a report by the State Capture Commission. The ANC is holding its 5th National General Council at Boksburg in the east of Johannesburg. The NEC's role is to review the performance of the leadership and as well as of the party. Swana says the ANC will never return to its former glory as long as it's infiltrated by corrupt individuals.
What needed to be done and what still needs to be done is that we need to find a situation where a comrade charges another comrade according to the constitution. We want to see a person like Thabang Makwetla charging Gwede Mandashe for the Bosasa mischief. The Integrity Commission, which they did set up, has several shortcomings. One of them is that, in my judgment, is integrity. The Integrity Commission is subordinate to the culprits, which is the NSC, which most of the time the culprits come from there.
The Leronarebatu Memorial Trust has officially launched the Maseru Massacre art exhibition and musical tribute in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. The trust advocates for the socio-economic and educational support of the victims of the Maseru Massacre. The exhibition tribute in East London coincides with the 43rd commemoration of that massacre in 1982. This is where 30 African National Congress cadres who were in exile in Lesotho were killed in an attack by the apartheid SADF alongside 12 Lesotho nationals. The organizer, Nomzamo Nkachu, says they are calling on government to accelerate the provision of support to the families of those who lost their lives and survivors of the massacre.
Families are still faced with challenges, Sidima. We've got families that are still crying. I'll give you an example of widows who are still grappling or not knowing how they will be able to get their husbands' force numbers. Their husbands were part of the victims of the 1982 Maseru massacres. Now, having a force number unlocks the family to getting an education assist for their children, for them to get a military veterans pension. Those are widows who they've been knocking at different doors and no one is assisting.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to get his country's law changed so that a presidential election could take place within 3 months. He, however, says he however says this can only happen if the US and Europe guarantee the security of the elections. The BBC's Paul Moss reports.
I have the will and the readiness, President Zelensky said, announcing that Ukraine would hold an election within the next 60 to 90 days. He may have been responding to stinging criticism from Donald Trump, who had once again suggested Ukraine wasn't properly democratic if its president remained in office without a vote. One justification for this has always been that it's not possible to hold an election in the midst of war. Zelensky asked the US and Europe for help with security to ensure the contest can go ahead safely.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jonani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Uganda are the first nation to arrive in Morocco ahead of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, while FIFA accused of breaching own rules with Trump award. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
So, what's coming up in the next half
an
hour?
In the next hour, we look at 11 Nigerian military officers who were briefly held in Burkina Faso after their Air Force C-130 made an emergency landing in the country. It said that the aircraft entered the airspace of the Alliance of Sahel states, but they did not have prior approval. We'll find out about that story in just a bit. My name is Asanda Beda.
I was just about to say that voice is of Asanda Beda,
yes.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. I'm going to be looking at International Human Rights Day, which we're celebrating today or commemorating, depending on where you are in the world. If you're in a country where you take it for granted, we are very happy for you. But there's a lot of countries, especially across our continent, sadly, where human rights are still abused and, citizens literally just suffering most of the time under their own governments. We'll unpack that.
We are on www.channelafrica.co.za. On YouTube, we're live streaming there at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That very same handle is across our other social media platforms where we welcome your views and questions about our show. And SABC Plus app via mobile phones is another way that you can connect with us.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
11 Nigerian military officers were briefly held in Burkina Faso after their Air Force C-130 made an emergency landing in the country. The aircraft reportedly entered the airspace of the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, without prior approval, prompting a firm warning from the alliance's military authorities. The incident has raised questions about Nigeria's regional role, especially following its recent deployment of a jet to Guinea-Bissau, and whether the country could be caught in wider geopolitical maneuvers in West Africa. To help us understand the implications of this, we're joined by Chidi Omeje, who is a Nigerian security analyst and publisher of Security Digest, and who has written extensively on how Nigeria must protect its sovereignty and regional interests. Good morning, Chidi, and thank you for making time for us. How are you this Wednesday?
Good morning, Asanda. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Yeah.
Can you give our listeners a brief overview of what happened in the Nigerian C-130 in Burkina Faso? Why it's causing such a stir?
Let me just cap it this way. It appears that the matter has been resolved, but I can give you a background of what really happened. You know that there was a coup attempt in Benin Republic on Sunday, and of course you know that Benin Republic is the next country, southwards, westwards, in the region. It's not a small country, and they needed the support of Nigeria. So they called the commander-in-chief, the president, requesting for support. So the president granted a support, granted a coverage, and of course even sent in troops. And eventually the coup was quelled. And you know that within the sub-region, there's what they call AES, talking about the few countries in West Africa that are currently under military government. So those guys, talking about Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic. Now, after the coup was, quelled, we later heard that one of Nigeria's C-130, a ferry flight, moved towards Burkina Faso, and we learned that it had a distress call, and it had a distress, and they had to do emergency landing in Burkina Faso. So, but later on, the junta in Burkina Faso made a statement that a stranger aircraft from Nigeria had been forced to land in Burkina Faso because it trespassed the airspace. They seized the aircraft, and then the crew, 2 crew members and 9 soldiers inside the aircraft. So later on, Nigerian authorities released their own statement talking about Nigerian Air Force and said, what happened was that the plane had some distress, and in fact the plane was en route to Portugal. But he had a problem, and he had to land in Burkina Faso. Well, to cut the long story short, the military was saying diplomatic measures were there, and then eventually, just yesterday, the aircraft and the soldiers were released to Nigeria now. So as we speak now, the aircraft and the soldiers in there have been released. So this is just mirrors the kind of tension in the sub-region. It tells you exactly that all is not well in the sub-region, and the ECOWAS bloc, of course, has been broken since the military struck in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and Niger Republic. So as we speak, Nigeria happened to be, for those guys in that it's called, talking about the juntas, they see Nigeria as their key antagonist because, of course, we know that Nigeria is the superpower in that region. So Nigeria has always been, against that particular, issue of military coup, last decade. So this is exactly the background.
And as you mentioned in your writing, Chidi, Nigeria could be caught in external geopolitical maneuvering. Can you elaborate in terms of what you mean by that also? And if there are Western powers that could be behind the support of Nigeria?
Yeah, of course, you know that most of these Francophone countries, of course, Nigeria is surrounded mostly by Francophone countries. And then these guys, the countries that are trying to liberate themselves from France, from the French stronghold, they see Nigeria as not being understanding to their issues. So Nigeria now, as it is, might be caught up because France is really nostalgic about the relationship that has gone sour with its former colonies. So, Nigeria will not, if it lends itself to that particular, odious enterprise of trying to bring French back to its, stronghold on those regions, those areas, it is going to be a problem to Nigeria because these guys are definitely tired of French, chokehold. So Nigeria, it doesn't be careful. It might really be a problem because, like I told you, Nigeria is completely surrounded by these Francophone countries. But then, these are small countries that Nigeria can effectively deal with. But what we're saying is Nigeria must on no account, front France. Because I see this as a true thing. Since this man came in as president of Nigeria, he has made France a very, very, close ally to Nigeria, and it's not sitting well with some of these countries around us. So this is why I say in my last article that Nigeria must on no account lend itself to that particular proxy war, because it will certainly, not bode well for the region. It's part of the political difference, part of the geopolitics in the region. Those guys still remains our neighbors and our brothers, and I don't see any reason why we should spill blood on behalf of any superpower of France for that matter. That's what I mean.
On the point that you warn against repeating historical mistakes of African nations, and that one of those mistakes being drawn into conflicts engineered by outsiders, how can Nigeria ensure that it maintains restraint and strategic dialogue in this particular situation?
Nigeria must maintain that position it has as a regional power bloc, as the biggest economy, the strongest militarily in that region. It must maintain that leadership role. Must not be found, being in that position of trying to muzzle anybody, no matter how small the country is. The role I expect Nigeria to play at this matter of time is that of leadership, that of providing clear direction to say, look, we are Africans and we must carve our own niche. We must not walk under the shadows of any superpower. So Nigeria must play that role decisively, but it has to be fairly. It has to recognize the fact that these are also independent nations that are trying to, break away from the stronghold of this, French superpower. So Nigeria, the role I expect Nigeria to play is more of leadership, more of big brother role, more of trying to bring support to the dispersed, small countries around it. So Nigeria must not, lend itself to, to the fantasies of France. So Nigeria should rather, be more brotherly to its neighbors and provide clear directions, and just like it did in the Republic, to say you have to make sure that the democracy is sustained. But then, like I said, on no account must it lend itself to the devices of France or any Western power for that matter.
All right, Chidi, we'll leave it there, and thank you so much for your insights into this topic. We appreciate your time again. Okay. Chidi Omeja is Nigerian security analyst and publisher of Security Digest, speaking to us here on Rise and Shine.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
The story that takes us to Zambia. There are 2 men actually that were sentenced to prison for the plot to kill the president with witchcraft. You go like, what? So these guys were arrested actually in Lusaka, and what was found on them was a live chameleon. Can you believe that? Animal tails and bottles of concoction. That law takes us back to 1914, which is the Witchcraft Act. I can imagine now arrested and they go to jail for the next 2 years. You know, I presume that when you get to jail, they get to ask you actually, what is it that you committed? Now, this is the first of its kind, by the way, for somebody to be arrested for such. They remember whenever they pass, hey, Chikanga, hey, Uloya, hey, Mulosi. And imagine here I am in these early hours of the mornings, I get to talk about witchcraft.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
So today is International Human Rights Day, which is celebrated every year on December the 10th. This to commemorate the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN General Assembly in 1948, serving as a global call to action to reaffirm human dignity and equality, with activities worldwide focusing on promoting rights, challenging discrimination, and connecting principles to daily life. The 2025 theme, Human Rights Are Everyday Essentials, highlights that human rights are not remote principles, but are the daily foundations that allow individuals and communities to live with safety, dignity, as well as freedom. Well, to chat to us a little further on this, we're now joined on the line by Abigail Norco, who's the regional representative for Southern Africa's Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning to all your listeners, and happy International Human Rights Day.
Yes, indeed, and it is a wonderful thing, I think, for those that actually can take them for granted every single day. But I wonder, as the world marks International Human Rights Day, what is the significance in 2025 for you? How should people meaningfully observe or commemorate it?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bit like you said in the introduction earlier on, that we need to remember why we're celebrating International Human Rights Day. And of course, it is a day that we commemorate because it is a day when member states across the world decided to adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this document basically is humanity's common standard, recognizing the dignity and worth of every human being, no matter where you come from or where you live. And it was the first time following 2 world wars, colonial oppression, a situation of distress in the world that, the world finally came together to adopt this important document. And through that, today we have, some 80 international treaties that deal with human rights the world over. And as you mentioned, the theme this year is human rights, our everyday essentials. And the reason for that is really this idea that we need to go back to basics. We need to understand that human rights are not abstract, lofty ideals, but they are things that we live by and live through on a daily basis. So the idea that from the minute you wake up to the minute you sleep, you are actually enjoying human rights. And the day that somebody is to take those rights away from you, you will really feel them, because we're talking about, the right to food, the right to water, the right to work, the right to education, the right to health. These are all fundamental human rights that need to be respected, promoted, and where they are found wanting, to advocate for change. They also offer a platform for advocacy and engagement. So I think it's really important that everybody takes a moment to recognize that human rights are real everyday things. They are attainable, they are essential, and they make life all that much better.
So many African countries across our continent have constitutions that guarantee fundamental rights, but we still see people continuing to face inequality, a lack of basic services, and actually widespread rights violations. What does your office see as the biggest gap between commitment and implementation?
Well, I think the big challenge is really accountability, to ensure that, where these human rights are not enjoyed, that there is accountability, that people have the opportunity to be able to seek redress. Of course, the foundation of human rights is accountability. But what it does require is that countries, whether it be, on the African continent or the world over, must have mechanisms in place to ensure that where a human rights violation or where an abuse takes place, that there are mechanisms in place to be able to seek redress and corrective measures where those human rights violations take place. So, a lot of the work that we do at the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights is really to work with countries to see how they can strengthen their national protection systems to ensure that, people can enjoy their rights, and where they are left wanting, as I mentioned, that they have a place to go to seek redress.
Is there work to do you think, in terms of actually even teaching people that some of the things that they're going through is an abuse of human rights?
Yes, I think that begins with human rights education and human rights awareness. And so you have, in many countries, you have national human rights institutions that play a really important role in promoting human rights. But there also is a role of government as well. Many times you have government departments that are responsible for promoting human rights so that, people are also aware of what their human rights are. But we also often refer to human rights education. So human rights education is the idea that even in schools, young people should be taught about human rights, so that it really becomes infused in the daily lives of ordinary people from a very, very young age. So there are many mediums in which, our office advocates for this. And, through education, through promotional campaigns, through international days, such as the one that we're celebrating today or commemorating, to really project the idea that human rights belong to all of us, no matter where you come from or where you live.
How do we grapple on the continent with clashes between culture and human rights?
Well, I think the fundamental premise of human rights is that we all have dignity, that we have freedom, and that we have equality. And I believe that there is no culture in the world that is against those principles. So the idea of a culture craft is it really isn't really what we are all about. It is about humanity. It is about Ubuntu, as we often refer to in Southern Africa. This idea that I am because you are. I don't think that there is a single place in the world where anybody can reject the idea that somehow we have freedom, that somehow we have dignity, that somehow we have equality.
So what do you want people to think about the most today?
Well, I think many things, really. I mean, I think let's not take human rights for granted. Make sure that human rights are infused in your daily lives, in your places of work, in your schools, in your places of worship, in your homes. The idea that really human rights begin at home. They begin with you, they begin with they begin with all of us. And we all have an important role to play. So we're also encouraging people to pass the message, post on social media, use the hashtag everyday rights, and promote the idea that really human rights belong to all of us.
Abigail, we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us on this very important issue on this very special day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Happy International Day.
That's Abigail Ndoro, who's the regional representative for Southern Africa at the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, speaking to us about International Human Rights Day.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's 7:30 Central African time, and still to come in the next 30 minutes. You've got an interesting interview coming up shortly, haven't you?
We're going to be looking at the stigma faced by people living with HIV and AIDS. A new report has been conducted in collaboration with about 3 major bodies. I believe the Human Sciences Research Council is involved, the National AIDS Council, as well as the National Association of People Living with HIV and AIDS. And this is the thing, we say news is news, but it's not really that new. The same things keep coming around and cycling around. And we've been talking about these things. Even in 2025, we're still saying there's a stigma against people living with HIV and AIDS.
All right.
So that will be later on, yeah.
Yeah, it's coming up shortly. Right now, though, here in News Headlines, here's Dwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The South African Human Rights Commission has again flagged the poor delivery of basic services in various areas of the country as a serious violation of rights. This as South Africa joins the international community in marking International Human Rights Day. And finally, the outgoing president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, has condemned what she calls tampering with the results of the elections held in late November. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with what's happening now with the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura to update us.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the Sports Desk. So Uganda have become now one of the first teams to arrive in Morocco ahead of the 2025 Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations tournament, touching down in Casablanca on Monday to begin an intensive 11-day preparation program. So the early arrival underscores head coach Paul Patt's determination to give the Cranes the best possible chance in what is expected to be one of the most demanding campaigns in the nation's AFCON history. Uganda, by the way, way, have named their provincial 30-man squad and did so on Sunday, will now train in Morocco and play 2 friendly matches before the tournament begins on the 21st of December. The Federation has not yet announced the opponents for the warm-up fixtures, but the emphasis is on fine-tuning physical conditioning, tactical organisation, as well as the squad cohesion after the competitive qualifying phase. The Cranes, by the way, are returning to the continental stage for the very first time since 2019, and their assignment in Morocco places them in a very challenging group alongside Nigeria, Tunisia, as well as Tanzania. Back home now, Orlando Pirates defender Asanda has paid tribute to Super Eagles captain as well as the national teammate William Tross-Ekong following his retirement from international football. Tross-Ekong stepped away from Nigerian duty with about 83 caps to his name despite being named in the preliminary AFCON squad and chose to call time on his international career just days before the start of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament. Nda, meanwhile, lamented what he sees as a lack of appreciation for the long-serving Super Eagles captain.
He's a great person, to be honest. I can tell you from the first day, I think the first time I got the call up when I met him. Now he's a fantastic person. Apart from being a captain, he's a leader. And he does so much for us. But obviously how football works. Everyone is not going to like you. But you can see from what he did for us, highest goal scorer in the last AFCON, player of the tournament. It says a lot, but I think as human beings, we're quick to forget.
Further field now, Liverpool bounced back from a damaging row with Mohamed Salah by beating Inter Milan 1-0 on Tuesday and the Champions League campaign back into life. Dominic Szoboszlai late penalty gave the Reds a huge win at the San Siro in the absence of the Egyptian star Salah, who was left in England after publicly criticising manager Arne Slot at the weekend. Liverpool fans loudly chanted Slot's name at the end of a largely drab match, which was decided by Felix Zweier's decision to give the English champions a perfect chance to snatch the points. Inter players were enraged at the awarding of the spot kick for a light shirt tuck by Alessandro Bastoni on Florian Wirtz, but it gave Slot a happy end to a troubled few weeks.
Our midfield, and I would like to highlight one player because he's been highlighted a few times also in a negative way, and this time I would like to highlight Konate, who played a very good game against 2 very good strikers together with Virgil. They were, I don't think they made a mistake at all, or like I said, we only conceded 1 chance. And that's a big compliment if you play against such a good team. And what it means to me, that defending, for me, that means a lot for me. But I said yesterday, it's not about me, it's about the team. And they were also there for the team.
Onto this now, FIFA's Ethics Committee has been asked to investigate President Gianni Infantino, claiming he broke the governing body's rules on political neutrality in relation to United States President Donald Trump. Infantino awarded Trump with the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize Award at the 2026 World Cup draw in Washington, D.C. last Friday, and has also done so, and has also done social media posts as well as interviews in support of the 79-year-old president. Now, human rights campaign group Fair Square has written a letter of complaint to FIFA. According to the letter, Infantino does not have the authority to unilaterally dictate the organization's mission, strategic direction, policies and values. As well as a large golden trophy, Trump received a medal and a certificate from Gianni Infantino. And finally, in cricket news, Hardik Pandya's brilliant half-century rescued India from a top-order slump to post a total of 175 for 6 before the bowlers tore through the run chase to dismiss South Africa for just 74 runs in 12.3 overs to win by an eye-watering margin of 101 runs in the first of 5 T20 internationals at the Barabati Stadium in Cuttack on Tuesday. It was South Africa's lowest ever total in a T20 T20 international match with a highest score of just 22 from Deval Brevis, while all 6 bowlers used by India claimed at least 1 wicket each. The home side started the series as strong favourites with a settled and more informed team, which had won 26 and lost just 4 matches since the two countries met in the last T20 World Cup final in Barbados 17 months ago. So South Africa have now used over 30 players in the format during the time and have won 9 matches and lost 16, including a one-off fixture against Namibia. Meanwhile, the second T20 match will take place on Thursday. Well, that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
So festive spending is another topic we touched on earlier in the previous hour on Channel Africa's Rise and Shine, and we spoke about how it can, as much as it's festive, lead to problems later on in January, we say with the W-O-R-R-Y in the end instead of the U-A-R-Y.
And it's a really stressful time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kids want presents, parents can't afford them. What do they do?
Do you know, one of the leading causes of that stress for me is doing the last minute shopping. The prices have gone up. You're on a rush and a crunch, so budgeting is probably gone out the window. You don't even know what you had placed in terms of that limitation in the first place. You just want to get it done. So proper planning, give yourself time and avoid the rush. I think that's another way of avoiding the January.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Let's get in touch with what's happening now in the world of business. Here's Matapelo Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. The Tunisian embassy in Pretoria says economic diplomacy is driving stronger ties between Tunisia and South Africa. Speaking at a year-end business networking event in Pretoria on Tuesday, Ambassador Karima Badoui hailed a year of growing trade links and bold efforts to showcase Tunisian products across South Africa. She reaffirmed Tunisia's readiness of fostering a partnership with South Africa.
This year, our economic diplomacy took center stage. We worked hand in hand with South African partners to showcase Tunisian products, to connect our companies and explore opportunities from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth, whether it was supporting exporters, facilitating B2B meetings, or spotlighting Tunisia at business fairs. Our message remained simple: Tunisia is open, Tunisia is dynamic and ready for business with South Africa.
And Kenya's central bank has lowered its benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points to 9.0%, marking its 9th consecutive cut to encourage bank lending and foster economic growth. Despite a steady annual growth of about 5%, risks such as a potential drought are on the horizon. The bank maintains its growth forecast for the current and next year at 5.2% and 5.5% respectively, while annual inflation is at a manageable 4.5%. And prices of cobalt hydroxide used to make chemicals for electric vehicle batteries have risen sharply this year due to cobalt export restrictions from top producer Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo suspended all cobalt exports in February, but then introduced a quota system in October, aiming to boost state revenues and tighten oversight in a country that produces more than 70% of the metal globally. Estimated at more than 280,000 metric tons this year, it has set new conditions for exporters, potentially complicating the recently introduced quota system, which analysts say is likely to exacerbate shortages and support cobalt hydroxide prices. And South African consumers are showing improved willingness to spend, with a rise in consumer confidence being noted in the fourth quarter of the year. The FNB BER Consumer Confidence Index improved by -9 points in the fourth quarter after falling from -10 to -13 in the third quarter of 2025. The uptick in the Consumer Confidence Index, coupled with employment gains and a further interest rate cut, suggests that retail growth moderation could be less than expected compared to the same time last year. FNB Chief Economist Mamelo Matikanga Ngwenya explains.
It is the highest consumer confidence reading for 2025. The improvement in consumer sentiment suggests that consumers' appetite to spend extended into the holiday season. All three of the sub-indices of the Consumer Confidence Index improved during the fourth quarter of 2025. The sub-index measuring the appropriateness of the present time to buy durable goods saw the largest jump from -20 to -14 index points, reaching the highest level since the second quarter of 2019. Lower interest rates and a stronger rand exchange rate are supporting the affordability of durable goods in particular.
And Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, defended the country's new social media ban for teenagers, dismissing the idea of technological exceptionalism touted by US platforms. She indicated that many Americans' parents, despite similar protections, the law, which imposes fines on social media companies for non-compliance, had faced criticism as a free speech threat from tech firms and U.S. lawmakers. Inman-Grant noted that many Americans wish for similar safety measures and regulations to prioritize youth safety for corporate profits. And look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 451. In Botswana, it's 13.18. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 33, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 10. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 43, Russia at 76 rubles 82, India it's 89 rupees 92, while in China it's 71.6, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rands 4 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,206 and platinum at $1,663 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.04 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapala Mahape.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
7:45 Central African time. We look at this story now coming from the world of business. Another one linked is Chinese exports to Africa are on track to surpass $200 billion in 2025 as Beijing continues to navigate a protracted trade war with the United States. New customs data shows China shipped $122 billion worth of goods to the continent in the first 8 months of the year, putting it firmly on pace to hit that milestone. During the same period, Africa exported $87 billion to China, a modest 2.3% increase, widening the continent's trade deficit to nearly $60 billion. The bulk of Africa's imports from China continue to be machinery, heavy equipment, automobiles, and metal products. Here's Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simosa with more.
In 2024, trade between Africa and China climbed to $295.6 billion, marking the fourth consecutive year of record-breaking figures. In an effort to strengthen African export capacity, China has also waived tariffs for 53 African countries with which it maintains diplomatic relations. Director and Chief Economist, Econometrics Dr. Azza Jamin shares some long-term implications of Africa's widening trade deficit with China, especially with Chinese exports surpasses $200 billion in 2025.
Africa is basically running a massive current account deficits. Money is flowing out of the continent in order to purchase machinery and equipment or other goods from China. And ultimately, what it means is that African countries will see their currencies depreciating sharply, and that being inflationary, resulting in higher interest rates than would otherwise have been necessary. And that, of course, is negative for economic growth for the continent.
But to what extent can China's tariff waiver for 53 African countries actually improving Africa's export competitiveness and reduce the current trade imbalance?
Theoretically, not all imports from China are necessarily bad, and are certainly not all consumer goods. And to the extent that machinery and equipment and investment goods are purchased, theoretically they could help to promote development and production in Africa itself. But that would also require Africa to acquire the skills and the infrastructure with which to develop its industries, especially in the mineral sphere where it has the greatest amount of resources.
Dr. Azza Jamin warns that China's dominance in supply machinery, vehicles and heavy equipment could hinder Africa's industrial development and slow efforts to build local manufacturing capacity, largely due to skill shortages across the continent.
If a high proportion of the imports is of critical investment goods that are needed to develop Africa's internal capacity, then running a trade deficit for a while with China in order to purchase these goods could turn out to be positive. But what is required, of course, is the development of skills to know how to use the equipment in order to promote industrialization in Africa. And I'm not sure that the skills within the continent have been developed sufficiently yet to result in that growing independence as a result of internal industrialization. That is one of the huge challenges that Africa faces, and it's going to be a long-term process.
With trade expanding but imbalances widening, the real test will be whether Africa can leverage new opportunities to strengthen its own industrial and export capacity. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
10 before 8 o'clock, and you've got a fascinating conversation coming up shortly. I'm finding it hard to believe that stigma is still an issue in 2025.
Yeah, it is hard to believe. So we'll be talking about the HIV Stigma Index 2.0 report, what's come out of that, and why this would even be something that's an inspiration to compile it in 2025, as you say.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Civil society, researchers, advocacy groups and government in South Africa are calling for a collaborative effort to end stigma and discrimination against people living with HIV and AIDS. This emerged at the launch of the HIV Stigma Index 2.0 report in the country's capital, Pretoria, on Tuesday. The study, compiled by the National Association of People Living with HIV and AIDS, the Human Sciences Research Council, or HSRC, and the National AIDS Council, captures the experiences of more than 5,000 participants across the country. To chat to us further on the contents of the report, we're now joined on the line by Mluleki Zazini, the National Chairperson of the People Living with HIV sector. Mluleki, good morning to you and thank you for making time to talk to us.
Asanda.
So what led to the compilation of the HIV Stigma Index 2.0 report? Why are we still finding stigma a challenge amongst people living with HIV and AIDS in 2025?
Thanks for that question. I think let me first thank the South African National AIDS Council and Human Science Research Council for providing technical support to the HIV-led networks to conduct this study. I think it must be noted that every 3 years we conduct the stigma index to check the levels of stigma in our country. In 2014, we did it in 18 districts. And then as a HIV sector, we felt it would be important to go back to the same district to conduct the study. As compared to 2014 study, this one, we are a bit concerned about the rise of stigma amongst people living with HIV, which is the internal stigma. People living with HIV are still blaming themselves for being HIV positive. People living with HIV are still feel guilty for being HIV positive. So it says to us, as people living with HIV networks, we need to engage meaningful with our constituencies and come up with activities that can address the self-stigma. And in this way, it will be important to collaborate with the National Department of Development so that they can provide that kind of psychosocial support through their professional psychologist. We have seen a decline in terms of external stigma. But having said that, we don't want to see in these stages anyway, where people are still stigmatized by our communities. It is results have shown us that families who are supposed to be providing support to people living with HIV are the ones who are violating the rights of people living with HIV, are the ones who are stigmatizing people living with HIV. So we are calling collaboration amongst civil society organizations so that they can also take it up this fight, because it is not all about people living with HIV-led organizations. So in their interventions or activities, they must integrate the component of stigma and discrimination. We have seen that in the healthcare settings, that people living with HIV and key population are still stigmatized by healthcare providers. In the entry point of the facility, you see security guards violating the rights of people living with HIV and the key population, stigmatizing them. So those who are brave enough, they pass through to get inside the clinic, and then those who are supposed to providing support to us as people living with HIV and key population, which is the healthcare providers, are also giving us negative attitudes, are also stigmatizing us. So these are the barriers for us to access healthcare services. So we are calling this collaboration so that as people living with HIV and Department of Health and Social Development, we can sit down and try to come up with some strategies and innovations in fighting stigma and discrimination. We need a free stigma society in South Africa so that key population groups and people living with HIV can be freely accessing these services in our communities. Thanks.
So take us through then in terms of how the study was conducted. 5,000 participants across the country and the time period that this covered as well. Can you share that?
Okay, the methodology that we used, it's a global standard methodology that is coordinated and managed at a global level by the global network of people living with HIV and AIDS. We use a calculator that was provided so that we can have our samples. So in South Africa, firstly, unlike other countries, we have requested that we must include in this study teenagers from the age of 15 years and above, because we are aware that we have teenagers that were born with HIV that are experiencing stigma and discrimination in our communities. So we wanted to make sure that we do have a data around that and come up with some interventions to assist them. So in each province, we conducted the study in 2 districts. So per district, we had a sample of 300. So that says per province we had 600 hands. We ended up having these results that are more than 5,000. And we are told by global partners that this is the highest data that across the world that we have conducted in South Africa. So they have appreciated it. But having said that, we need to make sure that these findings are not just findings that will be there and put them in the shelves. We need to make sure that we go to provinces, we disseminate the results, we go to areas where we conducted the study to give feedback, we design some programs that are going to respond to these findings.
Luleki, thank you so much for your insights and educating us on this and also shining the spotlight again on a topic that I guess we'll keep talking about because we need to. Thanks for your time again.
Thank you so much, Asanda.
Luleki Zazini is speaking to us there on the stigma against HIV/AIDS or people living with HIV/AIDS, a study done in South Africa and a report that was compiled in terms of what's most concerning there. He is the national chairperson of the people living with HIV. Quite alarming that he's noted external stigma having gone down, but internal stigma, as in the stigma coming from those family members of those living with HIV/AIDS, having gone up, and that being a challenge. Well, it's time for our news then, and this is Rise and Shine. I'm Asanda Beda. Good morning.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for always choosing us to start your day each day. And if you want to know about your continent, make sure that this channel is where you put your dial locked into, and you can also catch us on our social media platforms. Just look for Channel Africa, and you can also watch the show now. It's 8 o'clock, which means it's time for your news with Joanane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The South African Human Rights Commission, or SAHRC, has again flagged the poor delivery of basic services in various areas of the country as a serious violation of rights. Thus, South Africa joins the international community in marking International Human Rights Day. The SAHRC says the state's failure to provide basics like water, sanitation, health, and education strips citizens of dignity. Human rights lawyer Mamoetle Sibe says South Africa faces some of the most pressing human rights issues.
Human rights is about access to housing, access to food, access to water, and some of the most fundamental pursuits that were at the core of our own struggles against apartheid, but also at the core of our continuous struggles for service delivery, for justice at work, fair labor standards, but also just for a decent quality of living for everybody. I mean, we can say that the past 30 years has been nothing short of the catastrophic failure to realize the most modest and a basic of the fundamental human rights.
Still in South Africa, political analyst Sandi Leswana has criticized the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress Party, saying it's made up of people who have no integrity. Swana argues that the commission is populated by NEC members who have been mentioned in corruption cases, including a report by the State Capture Commission. The ANC is holding its 5th National General Council in Boksburg in the east of Johannesburg. The NGC's role is to review the performance of the leadership as well as that of the party. Swana says the ANC will never return to its former glory as long as it's infiltrated by corrupt individuals.
What needed to be done and what still needs to be done is that we need to find a situation where a comrade charges another comrade according to the constitution. We want to see a person like Thabang Makwetla charging Gwede Mandashe for the Bosasa mischief. The Integrity Commission, which they did set up, has several shortcomings. One of them is that, in my judgment, is integrity. The Integrity Commission is subordinate to the culprits, which is the NEC, which most of the time the culprits come from there.
Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Thousands of civilians are fleeing across the nearby border into Burundi. The BBC's David Bamford reports.
Eyewitnesses say the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have reached the northern gates of Uvira, the last government-held city in South Kivu province. Soldiers and pro-government Wazalendo fighters are reported to have joined the flow of civilians fleeing into Burundi. The M23's new offensive undermines a ceasefire agreement brokered by US President Donald Trump that was signed just a week ago in Washington by the leaders of Congo and Rwanda.
The International Criminal Court in The Hague has given a 20-year prison sentence to a Sudanese militia leader convicted in October of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ali Muhammad Ali Abd al-Rahman, also known as Ali Kashaib, was found guilty on 27 counts including murder, torture and rape. The BBC's Richard Cargo reports.
Dressed in a blue suit and tie, the 76-year-old stood quietly as presiding judge John Akona delivered his sentence. She said Mr. al-Rahman had personally carried out beatings and ordered executions during a brutal campaign marked by humiliation, killings and mass displacement. Prosecutors had pushed for a life sentence. He denied being a senior figure in the Janjaweed, the paramilitary force of Sudan's government, to crush a rebellion in Darfur, where more than 300,000 people were killed and around 3 million fled their homes.
And finally, the outgoing president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, has condemned what she calls tampering with the results of the elections held in late November. She has also accused US President Donald Trump of interfering in the vote. The final results of the presidential vote have not yet been released, but President Castro says the vote will be flawed. Hundreds of protesters gathered in the streets of the capital to demand clarity over the vote count. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, title holders Cote d'Ivoire named their AFCON squad, while Chelsea hopes of qualifying automatically for the Champions League group stages dealt a major blow last night. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
A very good morning to you if you've just joined us. You've missed out on a couple of hours of the show, but we still have so much to come. And in this half hour, we focus on the DRC and, fresh wave of fighting and M23 getting new territory.
So we'll be talking about that with the Channel Africa correspondent and then getting analysis as well from a political analyst who's based in Rwanda. Of course, you can get in touch with us via our various social media platforms. We are on all of them, literally, and our handle is at Channel Africa 1. Also, connect with us on www.channelafrica.co.za, and the SABC Plus app is where you can also connect via mobile phone.
The Upside, taking the African perspective to fresh levels.
From Channel Africa, about to have ourselves a good time right now. It's a whole thing.
You've partnered up with Focalistic, based on a true story.
You know, it's actually crazy for you to put it like that, partnered up. You know, this is someone I look up to from a very long time. 3 years ago, we put out a single, Pele Pele.
Yeah.
You know, that was my first record with him. This project, based on a true story, the album was so highly anticipated and premeditated on our end, you know, because something we constantly, you know, kept on going back and forth about, but we never actioned it. It's actually quite crazy because all of this is happening whilst we are both working on our albums. You know, I'm working on my album 31314 because there's a record, 31314, the interlude. So it's like a prelude to the album, you know.
Let me pronounce it properly. Is it 31314? 31314. Oh, 31314.
The Upside, live and real. It's dynamic. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
So it's 8 minutes past is 8 Central African time, and we focus our attention now on what's been happening in the DRC. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are reported to have entered Uvira, the second largest city in the east of the country. Thousands of civilians are fleeing across the nearby border into Burundi. Soldiers and government fighters are reported to have joined the civilians. To get us a little bit more on this, we're now joined by Channel Africa correspondent in the DRC, Jimmy Shukrani Bakonera. Jimmy, thanks so much indeed for joining us. What can you tell us about the latest on the ground?
Thank you so much, Peter. Just since yesterday, where the city of Uvira in South Kivu have been held in control of the M23, just after a long time of fighting since the beginning of this week, where the M23 have just been in fighting with the Congolese army FRDC, supported by local militias like Wazalendo and the Burundian army. It's just yesterday in the night where the information coming from Uvira just confirmed that the provincial city of Uvira have just fallen in the ISM-23 just controlling. So, and the M23 have just confirmed that. Even the local authorities contacted by Channel Africa confirmed that the city of Uvira just is now controlled by the M23, and reported that people have fled from Bujumbura in Burundi, because Uvira is a city which is near the Burundi country, and others fled from the city of Baraka. Others just went to Mwenga territory, near Uvira territory, and others just now are in Kalemi, just another city of the South Kivu province. So for now, the situation is it's a panic just in the population, but according to controlling M23 just is in Uvira, and the whole activities are controlled by the M23. Since the civil society reported, told the Channel Africa that activities have been just suspended, waiting just the new order of the authorities of M23 present in the area.
How significant is the city of Uvira strategically?
Sorry?
How significant is the city of Uvira strategically?
The city of Uvira, for now, was, after Bukavu fallen, controlled by the M23, now Uvira was the capital of the South Kivu, because it's where the governor of South Kivu is studying now. Uvira is a strategic city because it passed by, before arriving in Uvira, you pass by Kamanyola, just on the border between Congo and Rwanda, just on the side of the South Kivu in eastern DRC. So Uvira is a strategic city because it was the last battalion of FARDC and the Burundian army, because after Bukavu it was Uvira, which the government of South Kivu have taken like the capital of the province. And Uvira is very strategic because the whole operations of FARDC in Uvira will just stand in South Kivu, will just stand in Uvira, and people who fled from Bukavu, all of them, most of them, they spectated just in Uvira. Reason why the city was very strategic, and for the M23, this is strategic because M23 is going to now control the border between the DRC and the Burundi. I think it's the first one which is going to control, and it's strategic because there is in Uvira where the DRC have the Tanganyika Lake, which is very important for the people because of their resources, just which are coming in the lake, and this lake is touching the one side of the DRC and the other side of Burundi. Reason why this city is very strategic, even in military, even economically, and financially, because in South Kivu, the one only city which holds the central bank of the DRC, which is called BCC. Right now, you see how much it's strategic, and the bank and everything just is gonna under control by the M23.
How are authorities in Kinshasa responding to these developments? What are they saying?
Until now, in the morning, I contacted the source from the Minister of Communication and the Media, even the Speaker of the government. The source of there just are not sure that Uvira is now controlled by the M23. After the Minister of Communication Cabinet, which I contacted even the governor of the South Kivu province, the Professor Jean-Jacques Russi, told me that until now Uvira is under control by the FARDC and the Wazalendo militias, but it's also on the ground confirmed that Uvira have just fallen in M23's element, and they are controlling Kinshasa. Not until now, there is no communication from the government just confirming that Uvira is controlling by M23. Only maybe in the coming hours, Kinshasa could just communicate about the situation in Uvira and maybe tell people. But some FARDC officers which are in Mwenga who fled from Uvira confirmed that the city is just under control by the M23, and they have received a commandment from the FARDC's commandment just required them to leave the city in order to protect people, to struggle against the article, the bomb which can just kill people in the city, and they confirmed everything, but the government not yet confirming the falling of the city of Uvira.
And what about the M23 themselves? What are they saying? Especially given that during the week, last week, we saw President Kagame and President Tshisekedi sign a peace agreement.
Yesterday we were at the press conference just admitted by the coordinator of the M23. The M23 leadership said that the agreement, the accord between Congo and Rwanda are concerning two countries, not concerning M23. Reason why they said to be not concerned with the agreement between Congo and Kinshasa and the Washington Accord, the M23 said that is between two countries, is not concerned. And yesterday in the press conference held in Goma, the deputy coordinator of the M23, Beda, just talking about the whole situation and accused the Burundian army to support the FARDC, the Congolese army, and they gave a warning yesterday before Uvira controlled by the M23. They gave just a warning to ask the Burundian army to leave on the Congolese soil, and they told it to press that there is a 90th round of Doha, which is going to begin just in the coming days. He didn't emphasize that it will be which day, but he confirmed that there is discussion which are going to begin again in Doha, in Qatar, just between the government of Congo and the M23, and maybe he is trying to ensure people in this next round of Doha, it will be one of the important rounds, because after the falling of the city of Uvira, maybe the government will be understandable just under for the M23, and the M23 will be understandable by the government of Congo, is what they're talking about, but especially about the Washington Accord between DRC and Rwanda. M23 said is not concerned with that. Only they recognize the peace agreement, which are just in talking just in Doha, but not concerned by Washington.
All right, and that's where we're going to have to leave it, Jimmy. Always great talking to you. Thanks for that update. That was Jimmy Shokrani Bakonera, our correspondent in the DRC.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So let's get further analysis now on that story, and we're joined by a political analyst in Rwanda, Lionel Ditabirile. Lionel, thanks for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, and thanks. What do you make of these latest reports from that Rwandan-backed rebels continue to attack in the eastern DRC following a peace deal signed in the U.S.?
Well, I would change the framing, because this latest fighting started with a large-scale offensive from the Congolese armed forces and its coalition to retake Bukavu and Goma. And unfortunately for them, the M23 seemed well prepared to repulse this offensive, and they pushed towards Uvira. And it's clear that the objective is to make sure that the Burundian army leaves the Congolese soil, so that there will be no one left to support the Congolese government in its bids to retake those towns. We have to understand that the Kinshasa has never truly believed in a political settlement with the M23. Remember, in 2022, they expelled the M23 from the Nairobi process. And when the East African force was deployed and even imposed a ceasefire for 6 months and started suggesting to the Congolese government that they should engage in some kind of dialogue. I don't know if you remember President Ruto saying as much. Then the Congolese government requested that the East African force leave the country and invited SADC with an offensive mandate. And when Goma and Bukavu fell, we thought that this time there would be talks, genuine dialogue between the government and the M23 rebels. And until now, this hasn't materialized because Burundi had deployed more forces, and it gave Kinshasa some confidence that they could turn things around militarily on the ground. And this time again, it has not worked, and Burundian forces, the bulk of it, have left. There are some still deployed in Mwenga and Kalemi. But I think I'm hearing reports that they might leave as well. And this is maybe the best chance to get the two warring parties on the table discussing generally peace. And if this doesn't work again, I think the rebels might advance towards Katanga, and, the fighting might continue.
Right. The accusation by the DRC that Rwanda is breaking the peace deal, what is your take on that?
Well, for many of us who follow the crisis on a daily basis, I think this doesn't make sense, because the Rwandan government has been denouncing for the past 2 months, actually, that the ceasefire violations by Kinshasa, attack drones, fighter jets, bombing areas under control by the M23. And this was one of the contentious issues that was raised during the Paris conference, when President Macron requested that the airport, the Goma airport, be opened. And the response was, how can we ask the M23 to open the airport when they are still under constant bombardments from the government forces? That the conditions to address the humanitarian issues were not fulfilled. So for me, this is one last attempt to deflect from its own responsibilities. I mean, the Congolese government.
So, in terms of what it would take to end this battle between Rwanda and the DRC, if indeed all troops that remain are removed, and this gives a chance for peace talks and dialogue to happen between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, but that still doesn't yield any positive results, what then should happen?
But there is a peace agreement between Rwanda and Congo. What's missing is the peace agreement that addresses the internal dimension of the crisis. There are two dimensions to this crisis. There is an interstate dimension, which revolves around the arming of remnants of the genocidal forces that were defeated in 1994. That was resolved on paper, at least. What is missing now is an agreement that settles internal Congolese issues. That means the fighting is taking place between the Congolese forces and Congolese citizens who are coalesced into an armed group, military political armed group called the Alliance of the Congo's River Alliance and the M23. So until the internal dimension of the crisis is addressed, then the fighting will continue. The Congolese government will keep deflecting, saying it's Rwanda, but these are Congolese people fighting for their rights. And the answer to this question is in Doha. So, so long as the Congolese government, keep pushing away or delaying talks with Congolese, then what can we do? We cannot still entertain at this point the idea that this is an interstate conflict.
How can or should other African organs be dealing then with these internal tensions within the DRC?
I think they should heed the advice of President Beki, who has been saying since, the start of this conflict that at the core issue of this conflict is the problem that some Congolese citizens are not treated as Congolese, that they are denied their rights. These are things that even Nyerere talked about. And these things are as old as Congo itself, because these conflicts started in the 1960s. So until now, this question of Congolese who speak Kinyarwanda being admitted as citizens in their own rights, until it is resolved, there is no way out of this conflict. Congo is in for a long war, maybe not so long, maybe 1 year, we don't know. But even 2 months is still too much. We need to find the solutions in Doha. We need to have the Congolese government and the IFC M23 sitting at the table and finding solutions to their problems.
What is the intervention on the side of Burundi in terms of what it should be? Because civilians are fleeing into the country. Thousands, we are hearing, of civilians are fleeing across that border into Burundi.
Well, if the M23 can secure the area, pacify, disarm armed groups, because there were as many as 14,000 Wazalendo groups. We are not counting the FRDC forces that may still be trapped in the territory now under control by the rebels. If they can secure this place, I think most people will be willing to come back to their homes. And since this conflict started, we've seen reports from the UN showing us that most people who return to their homes were returned in places where the M23 had control. So we are waiting to see how this plays out. I hope the IFC M23 will be able to secure the area, to pacify these big places that they have taken in the last week. And after that, if Burundi cooperates, then Congolese will be able to return to their homes.
Lionel, thank you so much. We'll leave it there for today. Thanks for your time again.
Thank you again for having me.
Pleasure. That's Lionel Nditabiria, political analyst in Rwanda there, talking to us about the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels having reported to have entered Uvira. That's the second largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. We're hearing of thousands of civilians fleeing the conflict and entering the border with Burundi. Of course, that those ongoing tensions now having zoomed into internal tensions happening within the Democratic Republic of Congo after the tensions having been between DRC and Rwanda. So it's on a two-front level, those tensions. And we'll see what will result in a peace deal eventually. Well, the peace deal is there, but what will implement it and make sure that the conflict and tensions end?
Well, listening to the posture that the M23 have taken, there's no incentive for them to pull back. They're gaining new ground, and they said that this agreement between President Kagame and President Tshisekedi is between two countries. We're not involved. That is not a good omen. It's not a good sign. But let's see what does come out.
All right. Well, we'll head to news headlines now, and that's by Jolani Tulongwepe. Still to come, we get the latest from the world of sports, and we also find out what's happening in the world of business or economics. That's later on. Stay with us.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, the South African Human Rights Commission has again flagged the poor delivery of basic services in various areas of the country as a serious violation of rights. South Africa joins the international community in marking International Human Rights Day. 2 senior military officials abducted during Sunday's failed coup attempt in Benin have been freed, and the conservation world is mourning the death of the renowned Scottish zoologist Ian Douglas Hamilton, the president of Save the Elephants. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now to take a look at the sport. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start with football news. So Cote d'Ivoire head coach MSA Faye has named his 26-man squad for the upcoming 2026 Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations tournament, with Wilfried Zaha making a surprise return while Simon Ndengra missing out in the squad. Now, the announcement was made on Tuesday as the defending champions confirmed the squad that will take on the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco. The returning Zaha is included for the very first time in nearly 2 years after impressing with Charlotte FC in Major League Soccer in the USA, scoring 10 goals and providing 6 assists this season. Meanwhile, Jean-Michel Seri, also recalled, returns after a long injury layoff. However, the absence of Brighton Hove and Albion Simon Ndingra is one of the headline omissions. Ndingra, who was a breakout figure back in the 2023 AFCON tournament, has struggled for playing time at Sunderland this season, featuring only 9 times. They said competition for his position was very strong and that he had to prioritise players with greater continuity in club football. Cote d'Ivoire into the tournament in Group F alongside the indomitable Lions of Cameroon, Gabon as well as Mozambique. Well, Uganda, meanwhile, have become just one of the first few nations to arrive in Morocco ahead of the tournament, touching down in Casablanca on Monday night to begin an intensive 11-day preparation program. The early arrival underscores head coach Paul Putt's determination to give the Cranes their best possible chance in what is expected to be one of the most demanding campaigns in the nation's AFCON history. Uganda who named their provincial 30-man squad this past Sunday, will train in Morocco and play 2 friendly matches before the tournament begins on the 21st of December. The Federation has yet to announce the opponents for the warm-up fixtures, but the emphasis, of course, is on fine-tuning physical conditioning, tactical organisation, as well as squad cohesion ahead after a competitive qualifying phase. Now, the Cranes are returning to the continental stage for the very first time since 2019, and their assignment in Morocco places them in a very challenging group alongside the Super Eagles of Nigeria, at Tanzania as well as Tunisia. Further afield now, Chelsea's hopes of qualifying automatically for the Champions League knockout stages were dealt a blow as Atalanta came from behind to win 2-1 in Bergamo on a Tuesday night. Now, both sides went into this game with identical records in the league phase of this year's tournament, having won 3, drawn 1 and lost 1 in their encounters so far, and currently sitting on 10 points. Now, the result means Chelsea drop out to 9th position on the log table, so they're now outside of the top 8, the places that qualify automatically for the knockouts, to 11th with 2 league phase games remaining. Atalanta, meanwhile, leap up to 3rd position, 3 points ahead of the Blues. This was a hugely disappointing result for Chelsea, as even a draw was keeping them well placed to secure a top 8 finish they need to avoid the lottery of the playoffs. Let's hear from Enzo Maresca, the manager of Chelsea.
Yeah, I think first half we were winning. We were good, controlling the game. Probably the 2 goals we conceded in short time, 2 easy goals that we can both avoid that. But in this moment it's like this, and we need just to try to, as soon as possible, to try to win games again.
On to tennis news now. The world number one Aryna Sabalenka weighed into the participation of transgender athletes in women's sports, saying it would be unfair for women to face biological men in professional tennis. The WTA transgender participation policy currently permits transgender women to participate if they have declared their gender as female for a minimum of 4 years, having lowered testosterone levels and agreed to testing procedures. Now, these conditions may, further be varied by the WTA medical manager on a case-by-case basis. This is what Sabalenka had to say when asked about this issue.
And I have nothing to do against them, but I feel like they still got huge advantage over the woman, and I think it's just not fair to a woman to basically face like the biologically man, and then it's it's not fair. Like the woman been working the whole life to reach her limit, and then she has to face like a man, like which biologically much stronger. So for me, I don't agree with this kind of stuff in sport.
And finally, Helmut Marko, the mentor as well as a major ally of 4 times Formula One world champion Max Verstappen, is leaving the Red Bull team after 20 years as motorsport consultant to the energy drink brand. The 82-year-old Austrian, a Grand Prix racer in the 1970s, as well as a close confidant to the team's founder Dietrich Mateschitz, who died back in 2022, also headed the Red Bull Junior program. In that role, he helped bring 20 drivers into Formula One, where Red Bull have 2 teams, including champions Sebastian Vettel as well as Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, Verstappen thanked Marko in a social media post for the contributions he made to his career. And with that, it concludes your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call as well. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. It's exactly 8:37 a.m. Central African Time for Channel Africa Sport. I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
The 10th of December 2025, it is on this Wednesday, the final day for the observation of 16 days of violence, 16 days of activism rather, against the violence or gender-based violence and femicide. And one of the things having happened within this time is the African Development Bank Group launching an initiative to strengthen gender equality and governance in the countries of South Sudan, the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau, having allocated $3.7 million for this project. It's in partnership with the United Nations Development Program, and specifically to tackle governance gaps, issues like strengthening justice institutions, enhancing women's representation, and giving more power to civil society to demand accountability on matters affecting GBVF. Well, of course, a lot of things have happened in other parts of the continent on the observation of this time period, but we reflect on some of those then, I guess, today, just a little bit. Stay with us.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Let's get news from the world of business. Here's Matapelo Mahape with that update.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. The Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, ECMA, has finalized the legal and regulatory framework for foreign investor participation in its capital market, with an announcement expected soon. The government has also submitted its fourth review for the International Monetary Fund (IMF) extended credit facility, anticipating a staff-level agreement shortly. Founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory, Mered Fikiri Johannes, explains.
This is a huge milestone. I think that, let me put it this way. It is a huge milestone because, mind you, 55 decades ago, we used to have a capital market and foreign investors used to participate in it, but it was not formalized. But now, after 5 decades, now the regulator has been working very hard to establish the market. The market infrastructure is there. The companies are already being registered, dematerializing their securities, and ahead of the game, the authority is taking the lead. The initiative at the same time to say that, listen, guys, we want the foreign investors to come in and also invest, and we're already preparing the regulation.
And the Tunisian embassy in Pretoria says economic diplomacy is driving stronger ties between Tunisia and South Africa. Speaking at a year-end business networking event in Pretoria on Tuesday, Ambassador Karima Badoyi hailed a year of growing trade links and bold efforts to showcase Tunisian products across South Africa. She reaffirmed Tunisia's readiness of fostering partnerships with South Africa.
This year, our economic diplomacy took center stage. We worked hand in hand with South African partners to showcase Tunisian products, to connect our companies and explore opportunities from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth, whether it was supporting exporters, facilitating B2B meetings, or spotlighting Tunisia at business fairs. Our message remained simple: Tunisia is open, Tunisia is dynamic and ready for business with South Africa.
And Kenya's central bank has lowered its benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points to 9.0%, marking its 9th consecutive cut to encourage bank lending and foster economic growth. Despite steady annual growth of about 5%, risks such as potential drought are on the horizon. The bank maintains its growth forecast for the current and next year at 5.2% and 5.5% respectively, while annual inflation is at a measurable 4.5%. And the Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa has confirmed that its lawyer have written to the city of Johannesburg to demand urgent answers to its agreement with the South African Municipal Workers Union, SAMWU. The agreement, which the party has described as politically facilitated and misleading, committed to the city to an unfunded $581 million obligation until 2027. The DA has also questioned the timing, given Johannesburg's struggle to deliver basic services and its finances. The DA Johannesburg caucus leader is Belinda Kaiser Etiozonjuko.
One of the concerns we have is that someone has been on the news having press conferences talking about the 10 billion rand commitment that is a facilitated agreement as if it is a confirmed and firm commitment. That is a done deal already, and this is committing the city to money that it does not have. If this is the case, then there must be a forensic investigation. But first, we have asked our lawyers to get that information for us, failing which obviously we'll weigh our legal options as well.
An Australian's e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, defended the country's new social media ban for teenagers, dismissing the idea of technological exceptionalism touted by US platforms. She indicated that many American parents desire similar protections. The law, which imposes fines on social media companies for non-compliance, has faced criticism as a free speech that threat from tech firms and US lawmakers. Inman-Grant noted that many Americans wish for similar safety measures and regulations to prioritize youth safety over corporate profits. And a look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 451. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 18. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 33. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 10. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 43. Russia, it's 76 rubles 82. And in India, it's 89 rupees 92. While in China, it's 7 yuan 6. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 4 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,214 and platinum at $1,665 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.03 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapula Mahape.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Still to come on the show, we are going, not on the show, on the channel, we're going to have Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tau joining us for On the Move. So that's still coming up on Channel Africa. And of course, other programming will continue.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Muranziwa means my love in Xitsonga. So if you're listening to this, just know that you are my love. Yes. You and I are an item. We're dating. We are together. So I love you, baby. Why are you blushing? Why are you blushing? Like, haven't you heard somebody confessing their love to you? I mean, you gotta get used to it now, because I'm gonna tell you this every day, that I love you. I can tell you, there's so many people who are never told they are loved. I come to the studio every Monday, 12 to 3, because I've got an appointment with you. I take you serious. Forget about the other person, right? Moranziwa.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country was not willing to cede territory to Russia as part of a U.S. proposal to end the conflict with Russia. The Ukrainian leader has been crisscrossing European capitals to shore up long-term support and coordinate a strategy ahead in an effort to blunt the U.S. plan that could include major territorial concessions to Russia by Kiev, Ukraine, foregoing any future membership of NATO and reducing the size of its military, while some frozen Russian assets would go towards rebuilding Ukraine, among other measures. Reports suggest Ukraine is preparing to present a revised plan to the White House. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports from New York.
Zelensky in London Monday for meetings with the leaders of the UK, France and Germany, followed by a stop in Brussels for engagements with the European Union and NATO. Tuesday at the Vatican for an audience with the Pope, then on to Rome to meet Italy's Prime Minister, while insisting that under Ukrainian law and morally, they cannot cede any territory to Russia.
Things which are very important for today, I think unity between Europe and Ukraine, and also between Europe, Ukraine and the United States. There are some things which we can't manage without Americans, things which we can't manage without Europe, and that's why we need to make some important decisions.
As some European leaders view elements of the US proposal with some skepticism, while calling it a decisive moment for the region. Listen to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
We are still and remain strongly behind Ukraine and giving support to your country, because we all know that this the destiny of this country is the destiny of Europe. So that's the reason why we are here, trying to figure out what we can do. And nobody should doubt on our support for Ukraine. And that's what we are firmly standing behind. And the outcome is open. I'm skeptical about some of the details, which we are seeing in the documents coming from U.S. side up here to talk about that.
And as Europe punts the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine that includes robust security guarantees, an optimistic view from the United States, at least according to Keith Kellogg, the outgoing U.S. envoy on Ukraine.
I think we're at the last 10 meters of trying to end this conflict where it's at. I think we're really down to a couple of issues, and the issues that are one are on terrain, which is primarily Donetsk, which is the second oblast. You have Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia and Kherson, and the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is currently is in cold storage right now. But that is a huge nuclear power plant. If we get those two issues settled, I think the rest of the things will work out fairly well.
The Kremlin welcomed the new U.S. national security strategy unveiled this week of flexible realism that warned that Europe faced civilizational erasure while seeking to establish strategic stability with Russia. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov.
The current administration is fundamentally different from previous ones. And of course, President Trump is strong now, strong in terms of his domestic political position. This gives him the ability to adjust the concept in line with his vision. The adjustments that we see correspond in many ways to our vision. So, there is reason to hope this could be a modest guarantee that constructive joint work on finding a peaceful settlement for Ukraine, at minimum, can continue.
At the United Nations Security Council, this from the UN's Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Officer in Charge, Kayoko Goto.
Since the beginning of the full-scale war, nearly 4 years ago, the people of Ukraine have not only shown remarkable resilience to endure the horrible consequences of the war, but also determination to build a peaceful, democratic, and prosperous future for their country. We have seen this consistently in the action of Ukrainian civil society, in particular organizations led by women and young people. People of Ukraine want peace that is just and lasting. Meeting their aspirations and enduring the long-term stability of the region must remain our collective focus and priority.
As the world now awaits the revised peace proposal from Ukraine, that plan expected later Tuesday amid pressure from Washington on Kyiv to quickly agree to a peace settlement. President Zelensky indicated Monday that the revised plan he would present to the United States comprised 20 points, but that there was still no agreement on the issue of ceding territory, which Moscow has pushed for. And while the US side suggests an agreement was close, there's been very little pointing in that direction, particularly on the sticky questions of territory and security guarantees for Ukraine. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
On the movies next on Channel Africa, and Palesa joining us now, the 50% of the show, to tell us what to expect. How are you?
Doing good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Well, we're going to start off the show this morning with the relationship talk, speaking about something called the high benchmark effect. And this is essentially if your parents, or maybe if you're a woman, your father was a particular way, if you're a guy, your mother was a particular way, and you've looked up to that particular way, right? And now you want to hold your partner to those same principles, leaving a very high benchmark for your partner to reach up to, right? Because now you want them to be exactly like the person that raised you, whereas they're their own person. So we're going to be looking at that high benchmark effect in relationships in the first hour.
Wow. That's all I have to say on that one.
Yeah.
It happens though naturally that you are attracted to someone who's like, in my case, my father. For you, your mom.
Yes.
It just happens that way. I don't know if it's a high, what is it?
The
a high benchmark.
But I mean, what if you
because
want that person to be exactly like that person, right? Maybe there are characteristics, and that's fair. Sometimes it's looks, sometimes it's a little bit of personality, but you can't hold that person in the relationship to behave exactly like this person that you've looked up to.
No, it can't
I mean, it's a natural thing because a girl's father is the first male relationship that she ever has in her entire life.
Yeah.
And so, especially if that man is loving and caring, it creates a template in her mind for years and years and years. This template is imprinted.
Yeah.
And so the poor guy who comes after Shem,
But he might meet those standards. He might.
No, he'll never.
As long as they're not 100%.
He'll never.
Because, I mean, the expectation from the person should not be that
He'll
this partner
never.
must be exactly like my parent.
He'll never, because a relationship between a father and a daughter is nothing like a relationship between a man and a woman.
Right.
So he'll never be able to live up to it, ever. I've spoken.
So we're here. I mean, these days we're also so busy, right? We're on our phones. If not on our phones, TV screens. There's so many things that we're always keeping busy with. And that's the chase of the dopamine. So we're also going to be looking at a dopamine detox. How long can you stay removing yourselves from all these things that give you small boosts of dopamine through the day?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to know why we need dopamines in the first place. Why is it part of our psyche? Please ask that question. Why did God create dopamine?
I don't know if our guest will be able to tell us what God was thinking.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Financial experts say the joy of festive spending often leads to January's financial woes. They say the festive season can be testing for even the most financially disciplined consumers, and by the time people return to work, many will have spent more than they can afford. Experts say during this kind of emotionally charged spending period, financial discipline is crucial. Here's Nhlanhla Mahlangu with more.
With the festive season in high gear and many companies paying out a 13th check or bonus at this time of the year, financial experts say it's important to manage your budget well and even have money left over to help you navigate the long way to January payday. Between year-end functions, Christmas parties, family visits, travels and holidays, expenses can add up quickly. When the reality settles back in after New Year, many families suddenly realize it's only a start of a new school year and the post-holiday blues come with a few new bills. Deshni Naidu, Program Manager for Consumer Education at FNB, says there's no perfect formula for festive spending, but one can set realistic expectations.
I think it's tempting when we get that bonus or that 13th check is to spend it on luxury items or to treat ourselves to something nice for the hard work we've put in all year. And I still think it's important to reward ourselves, but equally important is to ensure that we can try and use it in a bit more of a responsible way. And what I mean by this is that if we have outstanding debt, maybe consider putting away a little bit to paying off that debt, and then putting maybe some aside for savings, and then finally something to reward yourself. I have a colleague who talks about the 70-20-10 principle, 70% towards paying off expenses and debt, 20% savings if you are over indebted, and then 10% to reward yourself. Alternatively, if you don't have debt, think about putting away for emergency savings and then to cover some of the additional costs you will incur during the festive season.
She says financial literacy must be seen as a life skill.
Money makes the world go round, right? Some people say. But money also can make or break us as individuals, as families. It can give us a future or not. And that's why I think it's a critical life skill. It's a life skill because we need to know how to make good decisions for financial resilience and financial well-being. And so it starts with understanding how money works. It starts with understanding how to spend less than we earn, how to use credit for the right reasons, and how to use it, for developmental reasons, also like for education, and also how to avoid getting into trouble with overspending. And that's why I say financial literacy is a life skill, because it impacts on our livelihood, it impacts on our lives, it impacts on our well-being, and it even impacts on our psychological state.
With some workers receiving a year-end bonus, we took to the streets of Johannesburg to find out how they plan to use it.
Yes, I'm so excited, and the beautiful thing about it is that it came with a letter as a confirmation. When they said on the 20th of this month, your salary will be doubled, I was like, wow. They said it's a 13th check in which the company that I've just joined in 1 year, 2 months, it's able to give you twice your salary, as they call it, performance based. So when everyone in the company has performed very well, they normally will do that. So I even signed for it to say, hey, I'm appreciating this. And when people are going to be playing around with their money, some of us will be saving it for January, because January sometimes it causes crunch times, kids coming back from home.
That
And that's
report by Nhlanhla Mahlangu. So we say goodbye as Rise and Shine. I'm Asanda Beda.
The news is next. Here's Joelani Tulungweb.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories. A Sawa UN High Commissioner for Refugees warns Sudan's troubles could spill over to other countries. And President of Save the Elephants dies in Nairobi. Good morning. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has warned advances by paramilitary rapid support forces in Sudan could trigger another exodus across the country's borders. The RSF took over the Darfur city of El Fasher in late October in one of its biggest gains of the 2.5-year war,